What's up, church family? Welcome back to the Revivalist for Christ channel. I'm your host, Jordan, and I'm here at Echo. Lisa! Anyway, I am joined with Lisa.
I'm sorry, are we live now?
Okay, so let's try. What's up, church fam? Welcome back to the Revivalist for Christ channel. I'm your host, Jordan, and we are back with another very special guest, Lisa from For the Most High Jesus. Lisa, welcome back to the channel.
Oh, praise the Lord, we're live now. Okay, it didn't drop out this time. We tried to go live and it said bloop. Nope. Okay, great. Fantastic. I'm doing okay. How are you doing? Well, better than you in your stream anyway.
Yeah, so guys, if you can let me know that you can hear us all right by just leaving a little bit of why don't you give us a dinosaur emoji in the chat to let us know that you can hear us. But Lisa, what have you been up to? Is that really what I sound like?
I'm sorry, I had to finish laughing. Nice dinosaur emoji. Okay, and some pizza emojis for Jordan for me, would you? Okay, so
I think we're just good. I think we talked about everything we needed to tonight. I think it's time to wrap up. I just hope y'all having a great. Why am I hearing myself still, Lisa?
do you have another window open on your computer or your phone? Because I only have the mic. I actually was on mute right there laughing. So it's not me. Trust me, it's not me. I have nothing else open.
Yeah, it's not you. It's not you. Guys, are you hearing me echo? If not, I can deal with it. I'm used to working with Lisa, so it's kind of what it is at this point. But just want to make sure that it's not on you guys' end. But Lisa, get us caught up with what you've been up to lately.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think I got all the laughter out. Well, it depends on what we're talking about. You talking about here on YouTube or just in general?
Oh, goodness gracious. First of all, I just want to point out that other people are also hearing me echo, so... But that's all right. That's all right. I have a feeling I'm not going to be talking too much tonight. But yeah,
okay.
Lisa,
do you want me to go out and come back in again, or
no? Please don't. Please don't. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Please. Oh no. Oh no. Yes, Lisa, on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Well, right now I'm doing your podcast. And then, let's see, the last thing I just did was my broadcast for the lonely. It was a lot of fun. Where we talked about communication areas and how to communicate with the Lord and lean on Him. And then, let's see, before that, the last thing that I did that I was really happy to do was when I talked about jacking of human sexuality. You guys haven't seen or heard that one, where I talk about some that have been done to all of humanity regarding transgenderism and how they got us and jacked us. Many of us walking around that got jacked by that junk. And then before that, I had Sister R. Renee on to talk about the tithing hoax. So if you haven't seen that on my podcast, Fire, I would encourage you to check that out, where we discuss how and why the tithe was not for the church today. It was originally for the nation of Israel, and it was never money. So any of you that are in bondage to the tithe, you might want to go check out that so you can get that revealed truth. And then before that, on Fire, I'm very pleased to have posted something about women and how they're being jacked and robbed of their rightful place in Christ within some of these churches, that we are not second class Christians. We don't have a second class anointing or second class calling. And so you might want to check that out if you haven't seen it. And then before that, it was also on Fire, where I talked about with Sister, oh Lord, don't let me blow it. We talked about Kabbalism and how Kabbalistic doctrines are creeping in the church with, Jordan, help me out. I just blanked out on that.
Her name's Deanne Loper.
Thank you very
She's
much, Deanne
she's
Lope.
the one that you keep calling your friend.
She is. She is. I just blanked
Very
out. The fish
close.
oil is still working.
Yeah,
It's still working.
I can see y'all are
And
very tight.
Kabbalistic secrets Christians need to know, and that's not saying come practice Kabbalism. It's a warning about how it is creeped into the church, and you should check that out. Okay, I think that's enough for now. I did a lot more, but
Yeah, so I'm gonna try muting Lisa and see if you guys hear the echo when I have her muted. If you guys can't hear the echo, which I can't, I'll just mute her when I talk, but bring her back on when I'm not talking. But yeah, definitely be sure to check those out, and I will be sure to link the videos referenced on the playback in the description. And we actually had Deanne Loper over here as well. And it's my hopes to get our Renee on as well to discuss a couple of titles. But today, Lisa, I thought would be the perfect person to bring on to discuss this topic of fasting. So, Lisa, what exactly is fasting? Fasting, and in your opinion, how important is it?
well, fasting is, at least for the biblical sense, it is a period of going without food. And it is for the purposes, it can be without food and water. There are different forms of dry fasting, or excuse me, fasting in general. And then also there are fasts where you abstain from certain things, whether it's just eating meat. For example, the Daniel fast is what a lot of people call it. You can research a lot of information about that online, where Daniel abstained from eating meat and drinking wine, and he only ate fruits and vegetables for a period of time. So it's a way of abstaining, and then you set yourself, as one might call it, before the Lord to seek Him and His guidance in a particular situation or circumstance in your life or someone else's life. You can fast on behalf of other people as well. And yeah, you do that to just, I guess you could say, in a way, to show the Lord you are absolutely serious and you want 100% of His attention as soon as possible for a particular situation or circumstance. But it can also be for purification purposes, where you want to be delivered from something that is oppressing you or vexing you. That's another reason that people fast, as well as for mental clarity, where they get their flesh out of the way so they can hear the voice of the Holy Spirit more perfectly. And there can be a number of reasons. It could even be if you wanted to set aside a period of time to do that, to like just honor the Lord. And then also, according to Isaiah 58, we're supposed to take the money that we would have used for food and or during that period of time and give it to the poor and the needy, the orphans or the widows. So there's actually a double blessing that can be incurred if you do it the right way according to Scripture. And then also there are health benefits from it, which we can.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because I remember the time that I inquired about fasting with my pastor because I wasn't quite sure what all the Bible had to say about fasting at the time, so I simply asked him. I was like, "Hey, do you know where in the Bible it talks about fasting?" And I was working through a few things in my life at the time that I was desiring to fast. The big thing, though, that I was fasting for was to gain clarity and hear the voice of God on the anti-Paul issue, because I was like, God, if this is true and Paul's not a real apostle, I want to know. How can I know? Please reveal to me. And that's when he really introduced his uh that that spark of church history in my life, which has been amazing. But originally, it was almost kind of, it's weird. I don't want to say I was talked out of it, but it was almost like dismissed in a way that I shouldn't really care too much to fast. And what's ironic is we were doing a program together. It was a discipleship program through the church called Small Circle. And our very next lesson was on fasting. So it was kind of cool to see God work like that, because not only did it give me the chance to get the answers I was looking for, but it also kind of showed him some of the biblical bases of fasting, and we both ended up going on a fast. But I'm kind of curious, Lisa, your thoughts in general of kind of that dismissive attitude we see a lot of times in the church.
Well, I think some of that is kind of to be expected because the flesh doesn't like to do it. So it is a discipline, and you have to decide that you are going to do, as the Bible says in one area, buffet your body. You're going to put your body under subjection, and you have to decide, I don't care if you don't like it, body, I'm going to do it. And there are times that your head has to tell your body, settle down, and you're going to do what I said. So if if the Lord is leading you and pulling you and guiding you in the direction towards fasting, you'll know it because you're in your understanding are just going, you're just living life, and then all of a sudden there's this call and this yearning to fast, and you're like, but I don't want to fast. I don't feel like fasting. I got coming up, and you know, but He's unctioning you for a purpose, and so that's the only way I can describe it, and you'll know, and you will either respond or not, but hopefully you respond to that unction because he's guiding you for a reason. You might be getting ready to have a spiritual encounter or attack, and he's going to prepare you for it in advance. The Lord prepares us for whatever's coming in advance if we're paying attention and we recognize his voice and his signals, so we won't be caught or taken unaware. But the flesh doesn't like to fast. I would say initially, once you start developing maybe a fasted focused lifestyle, as they call it, uh, then it's not as big an encumbrance upon you, and your flesh starts going, "Oh, okay, all right, not such a big deal." The longer fasts are still somewhat difficult and can be if you don't prepare yourself mentally and or physically for the fast. So there are reasons why the flesh might not respond as well initially. Also that's more than just psychological. It can actually be some physical reasons why.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I know for me, it's weird because what was it called? I think it was called like the 40-hour famine or something. Anybody who went to a youth group in the 2010 era will probably be familiar with this, or even later 2008. I can't even remember, but that was a big thing, at least in my area, the 40-hour famine. And for me, some of those things seem disingenuous. It's almost like a youth group game night rather than a calling to fast, and then it's always celebrated with a big feast at the end. And it just it feels more forced than inspired. So I guess my question for you, Lisa, is how do you know when or if you're being called to fast?
Well, I would have to say because you don't want to, and yet there's this still small voice that's telling you to do so. It's like you don't really want to do it. You don't feel like doing it. You might not even be thinking about doing it, and yet there's an unction that you should fast. I can't describe it any other way. It's the only way I can and tell you that you'll be led when it's time to do it. If, and I would say if you're a person who is given to fasting. Now, I'm not saying God can't call anybody to fast. He could call anybody to fast, but I also know that He's not going to call you if you're not prepared, kind of thing. So, like, He's never going to put a burden that you can't handle. So if a person has never ever fasted, I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's doubtful that he's gonna call you to a 40-day fast the first time. It's doubtful. Not saying it can't happen, but because you need to prepare. So I think he might call you to fast, initially maybe for like a single day. And you can most people don't have health challenges that would prevent them from doing it for one single day. You would begin to fast periodically, like maybe even seasonally or whatever. And then it's just going to become where it's of your life. It's just you can't even imagine not having a life without doing it because you realize how important it is to, and I call it getting quiet before the Lord, where you just spend time with Him and you're focused on Him, Him speaking to you and you sitting back listening because, I think a lot of people do forget that conversation is two ways. And while we certainly can enter in prayer and supplication, seeking the Lord, we have to remember to get quiet so we can hear His answer. And a lot of the cares of this world and different things can drown out that still small voice sometimes when we're so busy. And fasting kind of makes you take a step back and remember to relax and get quiet and get still before God and focus on Him. It gets your attention in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the perfect way to describe it because again, with that 40-hour fast or 40-hour famine, I wasn't like called to that. It was just like a youth group activity. But there was this very strong compelling to fast for this whole season of confusion. And it was interesting. This is something that I didn't even think about until just right now. It was interesting that this compelling to fast happened right before I got on YouTube. And it's almost like I needed that last, because there was a period where I was prepping to get on YouTube. I had all my theology. And then as soon as I was ready to hit live, boom, came the spiritual attacks and all this confusion and all these things that I've never heard of before that I didn't have answers to. And it was like so overwhelming. And then that like kept me maybe 4 to 6 months from getting on YouTube. So I definitely think that God used that time for clarity. And so, have you noticed that yourself, Lisa, when it comes to fasting, that God uses that time to prep you even for ministry, just like we saw with Jesus?
Oh yeah, yes, most assuredly, and also for, like I said before, maybe some impending spiritual battle that you don't know is coming up, but He's preparing you for war. Really, it's spiritual warfare. So that's why you may get a strong unction to fast, and and again, He's not going to put on you a burden that you can't handle. So I would say for those who are interested in fasting, get the information that you need, to learn that fasting is not starving. there is a whole biological process that happens and changes that happen in your body that are of extreme benefit. Mental clarity actually gets stronger during fasting. The body is carrying away junk. It's called autophagy, where it your cells go in and gobble up all the junk cells and trash and takes out the garbage literally. There's a wonderful myriad of things that happen when you're fasting that are beneficial for your body. Then to fear it if you get the information about it, know what's happening, but also if you prepare properly. Because for a longer fast, I mean, 1 day fast, most people would be okay, but longer fast, 3 days and more, it can be problematic if a person has been like a junk food junkie and they didn't prepare uh, to become fat adapted and move away from a lot of those high toxic foods and carbohydrates, because fasting is cleansing. So that's why low and slow is the way to go, and to start periodic fasts, and then you can begin to increase from yeah, maybe start with half a day and then a whole day and then 2 days, and then gradually move into longer fasts. Once you got the information, you've prepared properly, then you'll be okay. There are only a few conditions that are indicative to certain types of fasting and or fasting. It's a very short list. They're very easy to find. I don't know exactly. I'm not a medical profession. You can find that in a number of different books on fasting that will go over those for you. I know one for sure that has that information in there would be fasting, but this is not. This is most of these books that Jordan is going to post are secular, so they're not coming from a spiritual perspective. There is one that talks about it from spiritual warfare perspective, but there's not a whole lot of biological information in that particular book because it's coming from more of a spiritual perspective for spiritual warfare. But the other books have the scientific and medical information in there that will help. So you'll know that fasting is not starving. Before we go any further, did you notice that Manny is in the chat? I wanted to let you know that.
Shelly! Aw. Well, in that kind of, so happy to see that you're here, and it looks like you're doing better, which is we actually posted community posts, and a few of us got together on YouTube. And honestly, I think something like that, even Lisa, is a good reason to fast when you're looking for healing in even other people's lives. Like you can fast for other people as well. Uh, what would you say on that?
Oh yes, absolutely. I have seen God work incredible miracles fasting for other people. I've seen it at least half a dozen, just in my life in general, just in knowing that other people were fasting and for other people and stuff. And then also in my own life, fasting and praying for other people. I've seen great miracles happen. So, yes, most assuredly. I mean, you can see that in the book of Esther, where the Jews fasted. Haman, as you know, had worked a plot against them, and the king had issued a decree that was going to basically end their lives. And they all get together, where her uncle comes to her and pleads with her, Esther, and she says, well, I'll have to go before the king on Sunday. And that was against protocol. You could die for that. But she didn't go unprepared. She fasted, and what she did was she told him to tell the people to go back, and they were going to dry fast for 3 days and 3 nights, and her handmaidens would do the same. And then she went before the king unsummoned, and she said, if I die, I die. But we know she didn't die, and something miraculous did happen. So I think that if you're going through something serious, really super serious in your life, you may want to get before the Lord in prayer and fasting, before you go before whatever that is. I have seen the Lord change things from night to day. It literally seemed like overnight, just flipped the whole situation. And it's quite remarkable. But yes, miracles still do happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Shelly, we're so happy that you're here. We're so happy you're feeling better. It was quite so. Quick side note: Shelly and I originally were going to collaborate last week, and here's just an example of, Lisa, what you would call what is a spiritual attack, but what you would bring to light as a spiritual attack, where most Christians would just call it a coincidence. And so Shelly's husband and I actually ended in the hospital the same day we were supposed to stream, with the exact same condition. I don't mind saying what the condition was, but for Shelly's husband's sake, I'm not going to say what it is. But basically, it required on both of our parts a minor surgery. And I'm assuming it was there that Shelly got sick with COVID, and she was just in immense pain. And so we were praying for her. So it was definitely a very rough week in Shelly's household. So we all came together and prayed, and it's amazing to see how God works. So glory to God. So happy to have you here. And as far as some of those books that Lisa was talking about, Chow, thank you so much for sharing those. I did link them in the description. Those are some of the books that Lisa would recommend, and also in the description for anybody who is not already, you can find Lisa's website as well as her YouTube channel. But since we've mentioned it a few times, Lisa, as far as prepping for a fast, what exactly is a prep session?
Well, I would say that depends on what type of fast you're about to undertake, and then again, how adapted one is to fasting. But initially, what most experts in those books you would see would recommend is to ease into it if you've never done it before. And then maybe in the weeks, let's say you look at the calendar and you say, okay, I'm going to pick this day to fast. And a week before that fast, you decide, I'm going to cut out soda pop. And I'm going to cut out, I don't know, chips. Okay, and maybe if I'm eating a bunch of sugary stuff, I'll every day maybe I'll cut something out of my diet in preparation for that fast, so it's not such a shock to your system when you get to the actual fast day. Because if you're going from one day where you just carb loaded and you ate all kinds of pizza and high sugary foods, and I'm just picking on pizza, but it's a high carb meal, pasta and stuff, and breads and cereals and stuff and grains, and then just cut it out, it can be a shock to your system. That shouldn't be anything that is harmful, but you may go through more serious headache or something because it was your body is used to getting that level of sugar, particularly if you're going to go on hitting that second or third day on a fast. You might have more severe headaches or just the yuck feeling because your body is detoxing. And so they actually call it like a healing crisis you can experience. Usually not on shorter fasts. You might get a mild headache or something like that. So that's why it's advisable to prepare by getting some of the junk out of your diet if you're going to go on any type of extended fast. A 1 day fast is still advisable to not, to back off the sugar and the carbs in the, maybe the week or so preceding doing the fast. And then to make sure that you stay properly hydrated and take in electrolytes as recommended versus just a pure water fast. Now you can do a pure water fast where there's nothing, but that's a more serious fast. You really do need to know what you're doing if you do that, and or dry fasting, especially if you've never done it before. Make sure you're equipped with all the right information. And I'm happy to say that Dr. Filanov's book, I just discovered it's actually now for sale, where before it was only available in a PDF form that I could find online, and now it is available on Amazon. He is considered, at least by some, to be one of the foremost experts on dry fasting because he has actually documented cases and seen the healing that takes place from people doing dry fast. He's a Russian doctor, and he is now has a book out about it, and also a pre-guide to fasting that answers, I think it's called 20 questions about fasting. That's also available. I don't think I gave you the link for that, Jordan, but that's available on Amazon as well. Uh, so you can get some of the most common questions about fasting answered by a fasting expert. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and also I think, well, actually, one thing that I want to touch on, Lisa, is because you've said dry fast a few times, and I know that was a term I wasn't familiar with until just a few weeks ago when you brought it up to me for the first time ever. So I would like to hear you talk about that. But one thing I didn't mention about the books, guys, is there is actually an option to get at least two of those for free. One is available for free on Kindle Unlimited. I put a link for a 30-day trial down there. And then also, if you guys do the Audible trial, one of the books is available on there. You can redeem an Audible credit with your free 30-day trial, again, in the description. And in the event that you do decide to cancel your Audible description, you will be able to still keep that book. So at least two of those four books, and I'll work on getting the fifth one, are available for free. But Lisa, so dry fast, go ahead and tell us a little bit about this, because I know when I first heard it, I was like, is that even possible?
yeah, when I first heard about dry fasting, it was actually from, I'm trying to remember, was it a source or the Bible? No, it was a secular source, and uh, I'm sad to say, well, in this regard, that I learned it from a Mormon. Now, here's all these years I've been reading the Bible, and I never noticed that the Bible said that Moses didn't eat food or drink for 40 days and 40 nights. Not that just that he fasted. And so when I when I saw it, I said, "Wait, is that even possible for somebody?" Because we've been told you can't go more than 3 minutes without air. It's called the rules of three. You can't go more than 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Well, it turns out I knew the 3 weeks without food wasn't true because I had fasted in my youth and had fasted 40 days. So I knew that wasn't true, but I didn't know that somebody, and when I started thinking about it, as far as the rules of three, that people have trained themselves to be underwater for several minutes longer than 3 minutes without air. So I figured out that wasn't true. So then I said, well, maybe it's true that we can go longer than 3 days without water. And I started investigating, pushed past that gatekeeping nonsense they programmed into our head. And I discovered that when one dry fasts, the body will, for lack of a scientific term here, okay, crack or break over our fats and actually get the water that's in cells and use that water to, it's like our own biological water, to sweep out the junk and to hydrate the body from within. And so, and then there were other things that people recommended that you could do while dry fasting. Like one of the things, because there's some people that's really seriously into it, they go near some, full stream or lake, and they'll just camp out next to it. They don't drink any water, but just being near that does something for them, and they're able to take stuff in that way. They recommend that. Now, there's two forms of dry fasting. One is what's called the absolute fast, where you don't touch water at all. You don't wash your hands. You don't shower. You don't brush your teeth. And then the other form that's called a soft dry fast, where you can you can take a shower, bathe, or wash your hands, but you don't drink any water. I have done both. So I would think, first of all, if you're wondering about body odor, that doesn't seem to be an issue on the dry fast. I've done it for 3 days without touching anything, and that wasn't an issue. So, very interesting. Body works to handle that. But then also but my preferred would be that would only be if I were gonna be home and I'm not really going out, because can be a little tired, depending on what you were going through, well rested you are before the fast and stuff. And I just prefer to be at home if I'm going to do an extended dry fast. 1 day dry fast, not so much, but extended, I would rather be at home just to be able to just rest. And but the soft dry fast is my preferred if I'm going to be on it. I've done 4.5 days on a soft dry fast. It was the longest I went. I started to feel a little uneasy on the 4.5 day, a little weak. I didn't like how my body was feeling, so I broke the fast. But I intend to go back and try to make it to that 5th day, and then eventually I would like to at least do a 10-day dry, and then I'll probably stop there. All people who have done, you can find the videos here on YouTube, 15 days. That was the longest I was able to find on YouTube at the time that I looked. There might be others now with longer dry fasting periods, but most people were doing 10-day dry fast like they were standing on their head. I mean, nothing. It was just like, oh, this is a piece of cake. And they were shocked that they were able to do it. But again, me just having discovered it at the time, I just kind of went low and slow. But I've probably done at least 6 3-day dry fasts since then. Maybe I'm one more than that. I wasn't keeping track. So at least 6. And relatively uneventful, smooth, easy. I didn't have any problems. And what was interesting was returning to eating wasn't problematic the way it can be on a water fast, where your digestive system goes dormant because you're not giving it anything. It doesn't seem to do that on a dry fast because your body is going in and, like, on an optimum level, eating up the fat and the junk and getting it out. And so that your digestion doesn't seem to go dormant the way it does on a water fast. You have to wake your system back up in a water fast. You couldn't sit down after 3 or 4 days and just eat a meal. You could do harm to yourself or, God forbid, die, because your digestive system went to sleep. Where the dry fast doesn't seem to do that. I don't think you should sit down and just eat, a 10-course meal, by no means, but it doesn't give you the same stomach cramping or stomach problems that you would have after, say, a 3-day water fast or 4-day water fast, and your system went to sleep, and then you try to eat something. You can actually make yourself sick.
Yeah, well, and that's interesting because there seems to be so many details as far as different forms of fasting, different lengths of fasting. So, what is one way that you have found advisable when it comes to seeking the Lord as far as what fast you're being called to, and for how long? How does one arrive at that clarity?
Well, again, I would say God's never going to put a burden on you that you can't handle. So it really would be the decision, you know, that you make as to how you want to fast. If He doesn't specifically tell you, I want you to dry fast, you know, I actually can say, I never had the Lord say to me, I want you to dry fast, that I can remember. But fast, yes. He didn't say how, just to fast. So the liberty was mine. And it wasn't and so all my other fasts were always of water. And then when I started educating myself more, that it really wasn't advisable by some experts, because there's arguments back and forth about this. Some people think just water fasting ever. And then others say, no, you need those electrolytes. And I'm leaning towards that camp because I just can only tell you about my personal experience. Uh, Up to roughly, let's say, 10 days, I would say I didn't feel weak and tired or anything. But without electrolytes, I did start to feel run down. And it wasn't until I realized, learning about that it was better to have some electrolytes when fasting. And then I was able to go much longer without feeling, well, I'm hitting that wall. But I had done a 40-day water fast before, and it was tough. It was a lot easier with the electrolytes when I made it to just over 30 days doing the electrolyte fast. And I chose to break it at that time because break it because I had already reached my goal at that time. So I had extended it by over 3 days anyway. So I was like, I'm satisfied with this particular fast. But as far as, I'm not saying he can't tell you to drive. He might. I don't know. But he's not going to tell you that if you're not equipped or capable or ready or able. So, and really wonderful about fasting is it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. You can still fast. So that's really cool because it doesn't cost anything. I didn't have to spend a dime to fast. And that just what I mean, and then you have the health benefits, then you have the clarity that you're going to get spiritually and the benefits physically. It's like win. There's no downside to fasting. And I would encourage people to at least get the information if you've never done it and look in. I gave Jordan like 5 or 6 books, tons of information. There are videos here on YouTube with people who talk about fasting all the time. Granted, most of them are coming from a weight or fat loss perspective, but not all. And, I'm sure if you looked, you could poke around and find Christians talking about it as well. Most of the people that I would reference would be for the physical information concerning fasting. So one would at least know it was safe. Because a lot of people think that fasting is starving, and it's not.
Yeah, so I guess one of the questions that I have that others in the chat seem to have, and it's the question that I originally asked my pastor, is where do we find the biblical instructions on how to fast?
Now, this one, it depends on what scriptures you're looking at. There's a bunch of scriptures in the Bible that talk about fasting. Mostly, when you see the ones talking about dry fasting, it just says, don't eat any food or drink. People are going to, some of them, depending on if it's a period of repentance or sorrow for some transgression or sin, then they may have put on sackcloth and ashes as well. But in some of these cases, they just simply called for a fast, and there was no instruction. Where I found, now I could be wrong, but where I found, if somebody knows another passage where there's instruction, please let me know, is in Isaiah 58. And it's interesting because it reads very differently in the Masoretic text there. But what it says there is that this is that the Lord was saying to them that I didn't choose for you, But anyway, because in the Masoretic text it actually says it's not the fast that I have chosen, and they turned it around. But anyway, in Isaiah, the one of the instructions is that you are to take whatever money or bread, your bread. It actually says bread there, but a lot of us know that would translate money to that we would use for the bread. Okay. It's funny because the people call money bread, but anyway, so if you were to take the bread that you were going to eat and give it to the hungry, the poor, the widows, then God says he's going to bless you for that. So there is one instruction there, you can go read it for yourself, in Isaiah 58 as to how we should fast. and that should be, I think, incorporated as a part of our fast, and I have done that as well. When I discovered that, because right about the same time as doing some heavy dry fasting, I was learning about the Septuagint and the different changes that they had done with the Masoretic text. So I went over to Isaiah 58 and read it in the Septuagint, realized that it said that, and then started doing that, incorporated it immediately in my fasting routine, and actually asked the Lord to send me the people who needed the money or, what I was giving so I could give it. And he did. So it was beautiful. So, because want to give it to somebody just walking around on the street that may not have even need it. So, the Bible says, "Give to him that asketh of thee, and then him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away." So I don't assume that people, just because they look like they're having a hard time, need it or want it. I wouldn't want to insult anybody, so I do wait for people to ask. But this, I had talked about this once before. There was a full of women and a small child, maybe 4 years old. They were sitting out front of a store. I saw them. I was sitting in my car. I saw them come out of the store, and they sat there. And I thought maybe they were just sitting there in the shade. But then I also wondered, did they need? But I said they didn't ask. Oh, I'm not going to, go over and insult them by offering them anything. And I said, well, Lord, because I had asked him for it, I said, I want to give this to a family. And I said, please give me the opportunity. It was literally the last stop on my errands that day. And there they were. And I said, well, Lord, if they're in need, please show me that they're in need, because they may not ask me. And a man walked up and gave them some money, and they took it. And I said, okay, so now I know if I give this, they will not be insulted. And I was just about to jump out of the car, and my family member came out, and I said, oh, she gave them something. And then I said, would you give them this? And I have to get out and run over there. And she walked back over and gave it to them. So I got the opportunity, and it was exactly what I asked for, Jordan. That's what I'm saying. I've seen these kind of things. Something supernatural happens when we fast. I don't know exactly. I couldn't tell you. I don't have spiritual goggles where I'm seeing into the spirit world or anything like that, except that I have witnessed the results of fasting, and it does change things. It opens it removing things. And I'll be honest, the dark side doesn't want us doing it. That's for certain.
Yeah. Well, and so you did mention how there are ways to fast that don't involve food at all. And I'm curious what some of those other ways are that you have noticed people be called to fast. And I'm also curious if there are ways that the 21st century Christian may be called to fast that the first century Christian wouldn't have due to technological advances.
Okay, you might have to ask me that second part again. The because I got lost in the question. But the first part of your question, yes, ways to fast, and one would be, like I had mentioned earlier. It's called, excuse me, voice fitted out there. It's called the Daniel fast, and that is where Daniel just ate uh, fruits and vegetables, and drank water, and did not drink any wine or eat meat during the time that he fasted. So I know that was very popular at one time. There have been books written on it. They're available, I'm sure, all over the internet. If you just look up the Daniel fast, they're probably free information as well, in blogs and stuff, because it was a big rave at one time. It seemed like a lot of people in the church were doing it several years back. Another is what's called intermittent fasting. We see an example in the Bible with Anna the prophetess, where the Bible says that she did daily fastings and prayers before the Lord. So that would mean that she would doing another name for it is called block fasting. So you set aside a period of time. Let's say you said, I get up at 8 in the morning. I'm going to eat a little something at 8, and then I'm not going to eat from 10 till say 4 p.m. I don't know. I'm just picking something. And during that time, you pray and fast. So that would be a period of time you've set apart that's shorter, certainly, than a day or a week or anything like that, but is still fasting. So this is what I'm saying. A person can start where they want to start and do what they're comfortable doing without any pressure. First, get information. I don't think that you need the Lord's quote unquote permission to fast. I think He would love for us to be fasting, but hey, nothing wrong with praying and asking the Lord, should you fast, and would He want you to fast for a longer period of time? I don't know. That's between you and the Lord. But we know that we're instructed to fast for specific things, like if we were going to encounter certain demonic entities. We see that in the scripture, that there was a particular demon that didn't go out but by prayer and fasting. So, or some argue it was the unbelief that was actually what had to be dealt with. Jesus said, "This kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting." Some people think He was actually talking about their unbelief. So I do know people's faith, their peacified faith being increased during fasting periods. So that's something else to consider if you feel like you want to be strengthened in your faith. This might be one way that you can go about that.
Yeah. So the second part of that question, Lisa, was about the 21st century Christian. Are there ways that they may be able to fast that the first century Christians would not have been able to fast due to technological and cultural advances?
If there are, I can't really think of any, because fasting is simply removing whatever that is for a period of time. So, with the exception of actual leaving technology itself alone, I couldn't think of any advantage that we have. So, because one might argue these things are a disadvantage and how much time they take up from our lives. So, if one were, for example, to say, I'm going to fast for the entire week. I'm not going to watch any TV. I'm not going to mess with my cell phone. I'm just going to get before the Lord and pray and talk to Him. You may not abstain from food, but you're abstaining from all of that. Certainly within the realm of offering that as an offering to the Lord, to say, Lord, you know how much I love this tech stuff, and I'm just going to leave it alone for a week and give this time to you. That's certainly possible. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. So, I know that, well, see, my family was originally Roman Catholic before we were all converted. And so they had a practice of fasting. Some people would do it before what they call Lent. And so, I knew, I was a child at the time, so I knew of people doing. I was too small to do it, and would have never probably occurred to me to do it. But I knew about it, and I knew that's what they did. I knew that's what they practiced, but it wasn't for like these super long periods of time either. So, but during Lent, it was common for people to go, oh, I'm not going to watch TV, or I'm not going. In fact, when we were in school, they would ask us what we would give up. So, everybody would put on the paper what they would give up, and for an entire week, you couldn't do that thing. And it was kind of interesting because you could always tell when somebody was done with what promised they would do, because they were just zipping around with liberty, like, excited that they could go back to doing whatever it was. But that is an example of how you can give up something towards the Lord, or, and maybe He'll even lead you to do that with some things. I mean, anything we can make can become, that we do, can become an encumbrance and a distraction from our focus being on the Lord if we're not careful. If someone becomes just compelled, you feel like you're compelled to go golf or compelled to go jet skiing. I'm not picking on any of that stuff, but sometimes we can do things to excess, and that's not a good thing.
Well, doesn't that also defeat the purpose of the fast when you're just thinking about how miserable you are the entire time and how much you're missing that certain thing and how you can't wait for that thing to be re entered into your life?
Oh, I don't doubt it. It's probably going to make your fast of that thing miserable if that's where your focus is. But again, I was talking about Roman Catholics, and I was also talking about children at the time. It's like I think everybody was like under 12 and 13 years old that was doing this. So this is kind of way the way children would approach something, and it's just kind of a reminder that that is not how we would want to do it, because believe it or not, that time, even though it might feel like paint is drying at periods, when you're doing it, the time is actually going to go by quite quickly, and especially if you're doing other things to keep yourself in a way distracted from whatever it is you felt like you couldn't live without. And that's why prayer and maybe getting before the Lord and reading his word, and then meditating on that word, because that's what a Christian is supposed to do. We don't just sit there blankly staring at nothing in meditation. It's actually on the word of God. We're supposed to be turning that over and over and asking questions about it and thinking about it, and that's how we meditate. It's on the word of God, so that we're never led astray by something else. And these different new age religions and stuff, they tell you to empty your mind and all this stuff, and that's not how Christians are supposed to meditate. We meditate on his word and on his precepts. That's I hope that helps somebody, because if you think that just clearing your mind and sitting there and doing some hum or something is what the Lord would want you to do, it's not. It's not how Christians meditate.
And I have to apologize. That was a little bit of an unfair question to ask you about technological advancements, because I know that you're still impressed by what a toaster can do. So I'm sorry for bringing that up.
Okay, I'm offended. I'm deeply offended, because according to you, I'm impressed by what a swimming toaster can do. So
Oh, did you just make that up?
I did. Jordan,
Anyway,
you have been teasing me about Jaws forever, and you call it a swimming toaster. How did you miss that? One of my best jokes, and it just went right over his head.
yeah. Just sadly, it was one of your best jokes, but yeah, Lisa's obsessed with Jaws, and it's
Only for the sake of antagonizing you just a little bit.
because she knows I love sharks. Where's my shark? Oh, I think I have it over in bed because I sleep with it.
Speaking with that about sharks, is that hat a tribute to one?
What?
When he turns sideways, doesn't it look like a shark fin the way
I
it's on his
know.
head?
No, that's because it's because I have this big old man bun right here.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Anyway, so my question, Lisa, is because when we see the fast that Jesus did in the desert for 40 days, we notice that a great temptation came upon him afterwards with the enemy who came and tempted him 3 times. And I was curious, during your seasons of fasting, if you've noticed that there is increase in temptation.
Yes. I couldn't wait for you to take me off of mute. Yes. I'm, I'm going to say that just one more time. Absolutely yes. And you should prepare yourself that the devil may try to attack you. At ever, I have no idea way that he can, because again, he don't want you fasting. So it's just like you're going to pray, or you're going to really start studying scriptures, a- attacks may come. Because he doesn't want you doing it. That doesn't mean that you won't overcome him if you know how to stand as a believer, but he don't want you doing it. And as you guys discovered, and I'm so grateful and thankful to the Lord that you and Minnie's husband and her are okay. But you guys were going to tackle something that the devil did not want going out. And I keep telling Christians, prepare for war. When you decide you're going to step up for the kingdom and stand in some truth for the kingdom, the devil is our adversary. He is our enemy. Didn't say he's going to overcome you, but he is going to lob an attack. And so we need to be prepared. I have warned Christians about this time and again, especially when they're going to come on my podcast and stuff. I'm like, now, we're going to be talking about some heavy stuff. Prepare for an attack. Be prayed up before you do this, because he's going to try something. That's just what he does. It's how he gets down. It doesn't mean he'll be successful. We believe no weapon formed against us will prosper, but that don't mean don't prepare for war.
Yeah. Well, and just because Shelly did give me permission, and I just want you guys to see how specific this was, where it's just like that's too much to be a coincidence. So what we both ended up in the ER for was we both had a cyst, and you can have a cyst for years and it go unnoticed. But then it got infected. Mine was in my neck. I can't remember where his was, but it's just insane because that's so oddly specific. And then when it came time to reschedule, because Shelly was in the hospital, she contracted COVID, and that really weighed on Shelly's body. And it's so true that I do think something like that is absolutely a spiritual attack, because it's too much of a convenience at the time that we were about to expose like five major street preachers, because Shelly and I were going to have a conversation about uh, evangelism and how we feel certain street preachers, not all, but a lot of them, handle it the wrong way. And when we do end up tackling that, I will make sure to link that up here. But Lisa, how exactly can Christians combat this, especially for those who aren't familiar with spiritual attacks or spiritual warfare?
Well, contrary, there's some, I don't even know if they're real. I really think a lot of these people are agents of the devil, but some Christians have probably been convinced that we're not supposed to engage the devil at all. We're not supposed to even like acknowledge his existence. I mean, I've actually had people say that to me. So you want to pray before you're going to do something. If you know the Lord has said, I want you to go do thus and so, we should pray before we do. And some of that may be too fast, especially if you know it's going to be a heavy thing. But prayer, ask the Lord for his protection, ask for his, now you're asking him now, not, you're not praying to angels, you're asking him to send his angels to mount guard to protect you. And whether they like it or not, you plead the blood of Jesus over yourself, over your loved ones, to ask the Lord to protect them, because if the devil can't get at you, he may try to get at a loved one. And you just move forward and trust that the Lord is going to protect you. Even if you do get hit, you do get sick, or you do get attacked, you do get something, you just keep, you relying on him all the way through. And it may be indeed an attack from the enemy. But the Bible says we are overcomers, and you just hang in, cry out to the Lord for his protection and deliverance.
Now, what I have noticed is, and it's well intentioned, of course, especially for people who aren't saved or understand spiritual implications at all. But I have found that there will be loved ones that step up sometimes and they have such a concern where they're like, no, don't do that, that's bad for you, or you have to eat 3 times a day, or if you're my mom, you have to eat 10 times a day. Like, she'll make me eat 10 times a day. I'm not saying that's how much she eats, but I'm curious for those who are engaging with a concerned family member, especially if they're minors and if a minor's being called to a fast, but their parents are like, no, what would you say?
Okay, there was a lot there, but the minor, I would say first to that young person, go get the information on fasting and present it to your parents. Some good articles about it, that it's not starving. Show them that you know about it, explain it to them, talk to them, and let them know that you only want to do this for whatever the period of time is that's safe for you, and give them the information and let them make an informed decision. Okay, then you just telling them, I'm going to fast for 10 days, and they're probably going to look at you like, are you crazy? If they, especially if they don't know about fasting. See, I came from a Christian family, and we actually undertook group fasts together as a family. So that wasn't an issue. If I said, Mom, Dad, I want to fast, okay. It was, you making sure you're doing all the right thing? Yeah. Okay. And then if I in any way said during that I was fasting, I don't think I feel good, then they might advise me to, if after laying down for a few hours didn't change anything, and it was, mostly just going to be withdrawals of all the junk reading. And so they were really good about it. I didn't have those issues. But for another child, especially if your parents don't know about fasting, you might want to do that so your parents don't think you've lost your mind. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question?
Um,
Oh, sorry. Okay. Let's see. I think along the lines of like the whole okay, with the child, it was family. Okay, so when family tries to press you on eating, because you were saying your mom makes you eat 10 meals a day if she could. Sorry, Jordan's mom. He said it, not me. So
oh, she
usually,
knows. She knows. She's like, what did you eat? And I'm like, a Thanksgiving feast. And she's like, that's not enough.
okay, he's blaming his mom. But what you do is simply, I would let my family know. Like if you got upcoming family get-togethers, and it might not, especially like around the holiday season, if you're being led to fast, then you may have to excuse yourself from those events. I don't know. It depends on whether or not your family is going to be cooperative with your fasting. If this is going to be a bunch of pressure and everything, I think I would excuse myself. But the other is to simply let people know, look, I am fasting. Here's what I'm doing. It's going to be for this period of time. So if I come, I will be abstaining from food or whatever your fast is. And please don't pressure me about it. And if you don't have that level of comfort with them, it might just be better to avoid the conflict or back and forth altogether. But if they don't understand fasting, you shouldn't have that problem with a family that understands fasting.
Yeah. Well, and I just know, oh yeah, that's like such a good point because like if it was me and I was at a Thanksgiving dinner, because like straight up, I'd be like a puppy dog sometime with those like wide open eyes, and I'm like whining, like waiting for something to fall on the ground before I eat it. So I do think removing yourself from those ways that you may be tempted, it can be smart, especially if you're called into a season of fasting.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Once you get to where you are, now I'm not saying that you need to be tempted at any point, of course, But if you really are somebody who becomes a serious faster, you can be around other people when they're eating and it will not bother you at all. I'm just saying, if you, because you asked specifically about family pressure towards you, if that's going to be the case, then maybe it's just best not to go to the event if you know you're pressured, and it might even create some contention. Then you might want to avoid that altogether. But as far as fasting and you're with family when they're eating, I've done that, and if you're dedicated to your fast, it shouldn't bother you, especially if you're well into your fast. Usually, with some forms of water fasting, the first 3 days are the most difficult. Once you get over that hurdle, it's usually not an issue because you won't be hungry. Although, if you're somebody also that's very sensitive to smells and you're going to be smelling all that good food, it can try to arouse hunger if you're in the earlier stages of the fast. So that's why I'm saying you kind of just gotta, decide what type of battle you want to have or don't want to have, and if you want to keep peace, then maybe it's just best to avoid that conflict or temptation altogether.
Yeah. And I do think it's important to also remember, especially for minors, that the Bible calls us to respect our parents too. So, God isn't going to call you into a strife with your family, but I think being assertive of what you feel your calling is and praying for God's guidance in those situations, how to navigate those situations, can be very beneficial.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Lisa, what would you say for those people who they have a desire to fast, but the anxiety really gets to them and they're almost afraid of having something happen to them?
Well, I'll say what my dad said to me was a little girl when he was talking to me about some trepidation I had about something. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't concerning fasting, but it was about something new that I was going to strike out and try to do. He told me, baby, familiarity, if I'm saying the word right, the word right, familiarity breeds confidence. So this is why I said the first thing that you should do is get the information so that you know what fasting, so that you know how your body may go one way or the other. You'll be prepared. And when I say one way or the other, some people don't experience any negative side effects for a 3 day fast. Other people get headaches. Other people feel a little weak. So if you know what can cause these things, what to look for, you have the information, and you know what you're doing, that familiarity breeds confidence that there's nothing for you to fear in attempting to do a fast.
Mm. Yeah, and I think the big question that absolutely needs to be asked and answered is, does an unwillingness to fast equal a lack of faith?
In your case or other people? Okay, I'll say that was for the toaster joke. Um, no, it doesn't necessarily mean a lack of faith. I wouldn't even say that it had to do anything with faith. There can be a number of reasons why a person doesn't want to fast. Now, that factor, but I would look at it probably one of the most extreme on the outside edge of it. The last thing I would actually look to, because the body don't want to, it doesn't want to fast. You have to teach it to fast. Everything in our body screams, "Feed me now." I want something that tastes good and all that. So no, I don't think that that's what it is. And then we also have all this junk in our systems that actually make us crave things we shouldn't even have. So when you factor things in, and then the social, then the fact that, just like you talked about with family, and you don't want to deal with that, and so there's a number of reasons why you might have external pressures and internal pressures not to fast. But the last thing I would actually think about would probably be a lack of faith because, I just don't even see why that would be a factor for a believer. It's possible, but I'm not leaning towards that because I never looked at not wanting to fast being a lack of faith. It was usually a lack of discipline and not wanting to deal with, I want to eat my pizza and I want to have this and I want to have that. And your body's going, I want all this stuff. And you can't have any of that stuff when you're fasting. I just look at it from the physical perspective. Now, the spiritual aspect is, I'm telling you, the devil he don't want you fasting. So one of the things he'll do, I'm not kidding, if you decide you're gonna purpose a fast, all of a sudden you might have family and friends that are gifting you all kind of crap that you don't you don't even need when you're not fasting, let alone when you're gonna fast. And they might give you cookies, they might give you whatever your weakness is. See, that's when you had to say, well, you know what? No, thank you. I'm planning on a fast, and I'm going to start tomorrow, or whenever that is. So I don't want to have that in the house. You're just going to have to stand your ground. But there'll be 101 reasons why not to. But if you're being led by the Lord, then you're going to have the reasons He's given you too. And it may be a very short list. And this is why you have to learn how to body and say, nope, I'm going to do what the Lord has instructed me to do. Again, I wouldn't even know how to factor in the it's not faith thing. For me, I don't know how else to answer that, Jordan. That's to me has never been a question of a lack of faith not to fast. It's more seems like it's your body that doesn't want to do it.
Yeah. I muted myself, not you, my bad. So, where the lack of faith comes in, and you probably aren't as familiar with this because I don't think you have been exposed quite to so many charismatic circles where I dated a girl who was in charismatic circles, and that seems to be a very big narrative that if you're not willing to fast, then you're not exercising faith. And so that's kind of where I picked up that narrative.
Okay, so then it may be an external pressure from someone else. Because I was saying internally, I've never felt that it was a lack of faith not to fast. So if that's the accusation, well, we already know who the accuser is. So he's using that as a weapon against you. If you're not being led to fast and you don't feel comfortable fasting for whatever reason, I don't see God putting that encumbrance on you, that external or even internal pressure, because when you're called to fast, it's a function. It's not do this or you're going to hell. So or do this or you don't have faith. So that's why I'm saying that was never my experience. Now, just can browbeat people. I'm sorry on that because that stuff does happen. People are questioning your faith if you're not a participant in certain church functions or church whatever activities, things going on. So if they call a fast, and some churches do, and they may get a list of people who they're going to be committed to fast, and they ask you, and you're like, nope, I don't want to do it. I'm just saying, it's hypothetical. And you might get a funny look from somebody, but is that not your right? I mean, so that's just, again, that goes into what you're comfortable doing, what you're being led to do. I wouldn't let anybody put that encumbrance upon me. But if it is from a position of being afraid, because you've never fasted and you're not sure, then that's when I say go get all the information and learn. And you may actually be excited to attempt your first fast once you realize it's completely safe and you know what to expect and what the outcome should even be, that you're going to still be here when you finish. So, you know, yeah, I guess that's it.
Well, and it's so funny because what just came to mind while you were saying all that is all the YouTubers that come out that are especially like, oh, I'm the most obedient person to ever walk this earth. Oh, and Jesus was too. But I'm just saying, I'm fantastic. And they look at people in our camp and they're like, oh, you're not even willing to fast, and I fast all the time. And I think there tends to be kind of a fleshy desire to lash back at the people when they're like, well, what do you do? And you just kind of want to be like, this is what I do. But then at the same time, we have to remember that our fasting and good works aren't supposed to be before man. And, those who seek to have their reward before man, they have it now, but not before God.
Well, yes, and the Bible does instruct that, and that is one of the things I forgot to mention when you asked about biblical instruction concerning fasting, is that we're supposed to wash our face and not supposed to appear unto men to fast, but unto God. So it's not unbiblical to ask for people. Like there's times on my channel I'll say, hey, let's Sunday, but it's only to those who want to do it. There's no encumbrance. I'm not going to go, oh, you're not full of faith if you don't fast. That's not right to do to somebody. But I will call for a fast, just a 24-hour period, and whoever's led, I'm like, you guys can fast a portion of any portion of that 24 hours, or the whole 24 hours, or longer if you feel led. So, it's to whosoever will. But it's not, I'm not going, oh, I'm so super spiritual because I'm fasting. And that's not why I'm calling for the fast. It's to call the fast and pray because that's what the Lord said that we're supposed to do periodically. And if I'm just being led to do it, I just invite others to do it as well. And they can join me or not. That's all it is. Praise the Lord.
Absolutely. So we have a couple of questions here. The first one's from Spider Monkey, and he says, "Can you drink pediatric drinks while fasting?"
Well, you can drink anything you want to drink while fasting. It depends on what your goal is. Some things are advisable and some things are not. I would look into what the ingredients are in there. You would be surprised that there's stuff in there that you not only not want to drink, but not give to your child. So it depends on what brand it is and what the ingredients are. Okay. So that's what I would say. This is where educating yourself is going to come in to learn what, for example, breaks a fast. There are certain things that, while you may not be eating, would interrupt the cycle of staining from food that the body recognizes as food. So, for example, if you were to drink some chicken broth, that has some nutrients in it. Let's say, if you have more than a certain amount, could break the fast. As far as what they call autophagy and burning fat, it could happen depending on what the beverage is. That may not have even been the best example. But what I'm trying to say is there are certain things, if you start looking into fasting, that will break the fat burning benefits of fasting. But it also doesn't mean you're not fasting, because I had pointed out before, there are what you would call a liquid fast that people do, where they'll drink teas and coffees. Soda is never advisable. You'll find that out when you're reading about fasting. Clear broths. So it depends on what the goal is and what you're interested in doing. But again, if it has any kind of artificial stuff in there, not advisable.
Okay. So, important question. What about Zevia?
I gotta go. Okay, I gotta go. No, fizzy drinks are not advisable. From what I've studied about, are you okay? About fasting. So I'd have to look at the ingredients of Zevia,
Oh,
but
easy. Hold
probably
on, I
not.
got you. Hold on. Let's see. That's it right there. I just need a quick
I can't
analysis.
see that. I'm on my cell phone. I can't read. Would you
Oh,
read
you're.
it?
Oh, okay. So, Zevia.
Look, he was excited to do that.
Carbonated water.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, stevia leaf extract.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Tartaric acid.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Um, I think this says natural flavors.
Yeah, see, that's the one right there that's not advisable. But also certain acids when you're fasting, it's not advisable like on an empty stomach like that. So do your own research. You might do your own experimentation because I know if Jordan's fasting, he's gonna have one. But like if you were to have drank some water first, again, I'm not advising this. I'm saying what Jordan's probably gonna do. Then you might be okay because some things can actually gripe your stomach and bother you during a fast. So that's why it's not advisable to drink certain things. And fizzy drinks is not usually one of them. Again, it depends on the person and what they're comfortable doing. I would say no, but Jordan would say yes, yes, yes. So, but because some people say don't drink coffee, don't drink tea, but other people do. So that's why I'm saying it's your fast. You can do it like you want. Low and slow is the way to go. See how your body responds. I wouldn't drink personally anything that had any artificial anything in it. Not
But it's
advisable.
natural.
Yeah, but see that there's a whole thing about when they're calling things natural flavors where there can be thousands of potential different chemicals in there that they can call natural. So you have to do your own research.
Okay,
But
we're
I would
just
say
gonna
no.
like let's just pretend we took a Sharpie and crossed that one off. Everything else up to natural flavors is good. What about caffeine?
Not advisable. It depends on the person. Some people can drink a little coffee and they're fine. Other people make them not feel well. This is again what you listen to your body. There are plenty of people on here that talk about fasting here on YouTube and even in the fasting books that'll say 1 cup is probably okay. Then you'll have another expert that'll say not advisable. So you kind of got to decide for yourself on that what you're comfortable doing or not doing and listen to your own body.
I'm gonna listen to the first doctor. So the next question comes from Ray Ray, and she wants to know what electrolytes are advised.
Oh, well, that would be salt. Most people would say sea salt, right? And then magnesium and potassium. And some people would say baking soda, which is actually a salt. And, and you would just use small amounts of that, like let's say, I don't know, it depends on your body weight. And because what will happen is when you take some, if you take what's called bowel tolerance, you may have to run to the bathroom and do number two. So you would do just before the bowel tolerance. And this is where a little bit of experimentation on your part would come in. So some people just put a pinch in their water of each one of those things. Others would put a little bit more than a pinch, maybe an eighth of a teaspoon in, say, 32 ounces of water. And they're drinking on that for, the morning or the afternoon. It depends on what you're doing. There are people who would mix a lot more in there. They might make a lemonade and have, lemon juice and cayenne pepper and maybe a little stevia as well as those electrolytes, which is something one could certainly do. There's all kinds of things you can do. It depends on what you want to do. But if you want to be strict in your fasting, then it would be water with just those electrolytes added in.
And I will try to compare notes with Lisa later as far as being some good electrolytes that I can link for you guys as well. But we have one other question from Spider Monkey, and he asks, what type of fast did you recommend for people who are dealing with strongholds, and how many days do you think they should be fasting?
Well, if it was me, I'm just talking about me now, and the devil was seriously messing with me, I'm going to turn up the burners and I'm going to do a dry fast. Because I'm like, if you coming for me, I'm coming for you. So this is me. Okay, that to me, I've had to deal with stuff like that, and I call it warrior mode. Okay, that's just me. Now, if somebody has never fasted before, then I would not advise that. I would say start where you start. Again, low and slow. And remember, when you go to bed at night and you get up in the morning, if you don't eat, because that first meal is called a breakfast, which is break fast. So if you decide I'm gonna start right now, after my last meal for today, and let's say that's 6 p.m., and you start drinking just water with a little bit of electrolytes, and then wherever you go to bed, 9, 10 o'clock, whatever that is, and you get up in the morning, and then you continue. You drink your water with your electrolytes, and if you make it all the way to 6 p.m., you've completed one day. And I would say just be led by the Lord as to when to break it. You'll know. I can't tell you what is exactly right for you. You've got to seek God about that yourself and listen to your body and listen to Him as to what you should do. But the first thing is equip yourself with the information so that you know what is proper to do when fasting and advisable and what is not. And the other thing is, for longer periods of fasting, there's this thing that's called, oh, don't blank on me now. Yeah, I just blanked. But it's where if you eat carbs right after you fasted, because fasting takes your body into fat burning mode, especially when you go past 16, 18 hours. Refeeding syndrome is what I was thinking about. If you go on longer fasts, it is not advisable to just carb load when you break your fast, because your body switched to being a fat burning machine, and carbs create insulin spikes. Food in general, especially carbs, and it can create what's called refeeding syndrome. You need to learn about so that you don't make that mistake. I made that mistake one time. I felt like I was going to die. So you would definitely want to look into that. Okay, it is serious too. You can hurt yourself with refeeding syndrome if you were to just carb load. I learned the hard way, so I'm definitely advising you to learn what it is so you don't make the mistake that I made.
Yeah. Chow, your friend Chow, who you always bully, he asks, how does one deal with hunger and irritability? Are there tricks?
I don't know if there's tricks. I think there's certain things you'll see, particularly I know in Fasting the Ultimate Diet that Dr. Alan Cott talks about, where he says certain things are not advisable to do when fasting because they can actually increase hunger. I think that was the book he mentioned, is because he actually has another book called Fasting as a Way of Life, which I really like that book, but that one is no longer in print, and it's like, even to get one is, if you find one, is like $100. But in one of those two books, I just don't remember which one, he talks about don't do things like chewing gum, because when you chew, your body begins to prepare digestive juices in the stomach because it thinks it's about to eat. So that's not advisable. Using or like mouth lozenges type stuff can stimulate appetite depending on what's in there. So that's not advisable. Also, you wouldn't want to do that if, especially if it has sugar in it. So things like that. You don't want to increase hunger pains when you're already them to go away, so that the rest of the fast is much more enjoyable. Okay, and then making sure you have enough liquid, not too much, but then also make sure you have enough, because that can also help to quash or squash some hunger pains by making sure you stay hydrated. And it's said also that people, I guess, I don't remember if it's after 40 or so, uh, adults begin to have a problem distinguishing thirst from hunger. So it may actually be that you're thirsty and not hungry if you were actually to get a mild headache and or feel hunger pains. So what you think is hunger pains when it may actually be thirst. So those are some things. I hope I answered your question.
Interesting. So, Lisa, are there any final thoughts that you have on the conversation before we wrap up?
I would really like to talk about your shark beanie some more, but I can't really think of anything except that I don't think it's anything to stress over. I think it should be an enjoyable and wonderful experience for most people. If you decide to embark on fasting, particularly if you decide to become fasting focused or adopt fasting into your life so that it becomes part of your routine. I try to do, I don't always do it, but at least one day a week. And at least if I don't do it one day a week, a couple of days a month. So but it's your fast. That's the thing is, I can't, nor would I ever dare to place an encumbrance on you for anything. It's your fast. Do it the way you want. Approach it with knowledge though and information, so that you're not doing any harm to yourself, and you're doing it in a way that will be enjoyable for you, and you're going to get the most benefit out of it. But arm yourself with information. That way, if your family, friends are concerned, you can explain it. You're coming from a position of knowledge and understanding about it, and then they can relax about it. And you may even educate them to the point that they get interested in fasting. So, just get the information. Low and slow is always the way to go to start, and just be led by the Spirit of God. The Lord, he meant it when he said it, and it's true. His yoke is easy, his burden is light. He will never place something upon you that you cannot handle. And if he's called you to do something, you can rest assured he is going to equip you for what he has called you to do.
Period. So, Lisa, where can people connect with you if they would like to?
Oh, that's really easy. Any questions, any information that you would like, any complaints at all, it's revivalists for.
Yep. Lisa, are you there? Lisa? Oh no. Lisa? Lisa, did we lose you? Hello? Oh, good, you're back. Whew. That was a quick
Woo!
one.
The thumbnail, but Jordan wouldn't put it up for me. Revivalists for Christ. No, my email is the number four, the Most High Jesus at protonmail.com. So if you have a question and I can point you in the right direction, I'll do the best that I can. I do know some things about fasting. Jordan has most of the books that I remember that I had, and he either read or, yeah, I think I read, yeah, all of those. So please avail yourself to that information, and just relax and just go before God and take it to him. And if you're led to, then do it. And if not, that's okay too. You don't let anyone put an encumbrance upon you.
All right. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure, as always. Yeah,
Jordan,
Jordan, it was
I
a
do
pleasure
have
for
one
me
more.
too.
I have one more question. Thank you for having me, Jordan, and thank you to everyone out there. Oh, I see that y'all put that link there. I want y'all to understand that the Yeshua loves you too part on the link. I can't get rid of that. YouTube wouldn't let me change it. And when I first started my channel, I didn't know about the false name and all that stuff. So, just so you understand, I'm not being hypocritical, and I have the explanation in my About Me section as to why that's even there. But that was formerly my channel name when I didn't know and was believing there was a Hebrew name instead of the Greek name, which it always was. So, anyway,
If you guys want to know more about that conversation, I will link our playlist on the whole Masoretic exposed
yeah, it
conversation.
was really hard for me to focus with the new beanie on your head. So,
What do you mean?
just saying. Uh, Oh, that's how you normally look? So then the others have been a costume?
You know what? I think now is the perfect time to say goodnight. So, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you would like, well, actually, if you could like this video, it'd be greatly appreciated so we can get that message out there. And until next time, I hope you all have an amazing night. Love you all, and God bless. So much to my generous patrons who help me do this full time. If you'd like to help me do this full time, there is a PayPal donation link in the description, or consider becoming a Patreon today. For only $5 a month, you can gain access to weekly Patreon only streams and posts, all my research notes, and all your comments will be prioritized and answered first. Higher tiers receive free Revivalist for Christ merch, a shout out in all videos, early access to content, and even can decide what content I post on the channel. There is much more, so consider becoming a Patreon today by heading over to patreon.com/revivalistforchrist. If you're not sure that you're going to heaven, be sure to click the video on the left or click on the right for more great content. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel to help equip you, the 21st century Christian, in the field of apologetics and evangelism. By clicking on the channel